Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmitty, Swanny and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. Well, hello! Fancy seeing the two of you again.
Hello.
Hi, what a pleasure.
Indeed.
I'm shocked. You just keep turning up at the same time.
Oh, how are we?
Good.
Not too bad, thank you. How's your week been?
My week's been okay. I went to been away for most of the week again with work, which was fun. Might have snuck in a couple of bevies during the week. It's been quite nice, I think, and it's Thursday. Kind of feels like Friday.
Yeah.
How about yours?
Not bad. I'm on holiday still in the ensuite. That's okay. And we went on a little cruise down the Murray and then back up again on the SS Piap, which is a paddle steamer, and had a couple of, what do you call them? Piccolo champagnes.
Oh, piccolo.
Little piccolos, yeah. Little piccolos. And then not much else really. Yeah, that's it. And we're going out for dinner tonight after this. But it's been very nice. It's a bit windy again today, but at least it's been nicer weather. So all good. And you, Carla?
I don't really know. I think I've just had a bit of an ordinary sort of week. That sounds really interesting. It has been that interesting. It's been really dull. I apologise for my lack of interesting life. I'm not on holidays and I haven't travelled anywhere and I haven't been anywhere or done anything. But I've got a nice weekend to look forward to, so I can't complain.
Can I revisit what I did this week? Because all of a sudden I've just remembered, This is how ridiculous I am. The first response is always, oh yeah, I don't really know. And then I think of something. So one point during this week, I got with some customers and work colleagues, a flight from Shepparton up to Bathurst. We did 4 laps of Mount Panorama in a supercar and then flew back again.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Didn't really do anything then.
Yeah, no, that is literally how my head works. Yeah, don't really know, nothing much. Oh, hang on a minute, I just did the most amazing thing ever. There you go.
And it was good fun?
So good.
Did you enjoy
so
it?
Good. Yeah, really, really did. The whole flight thing was just,
Are you a closet
absurd.
rev head or is that your thing?
I wouldn't say I'm a closet rev head, and I wouldn't say it's my thing, but I don't mind it. I was probably more on the nana side than the rev head side as I was going around, because you get into these supercars and they go so fast, but you're in the driver's seat obviously, and they're manual. So I haven't driven a manual in forever, so coming straight off the blocks, I stalled it, which was nice. And then the instructor he tells you, speed up now, brake, blah, blah, blah. So the first lap I did, it's quite a challenging track, really, really hard track. So it's a bad one to do for your first V8 experience, as I now know. So the first time around, I was going fairly slow. He was saying, accelerate, and it's really odd because you brake coming into the corner, but you also accelerate before you've even gone through the corner. So rather than just accelerating out of the corner, you actually almost accelerate into the corner. But got to kind of 200 k's an hour, which is fairly fast for someone or for a country where you're not allowed to go over 110 normally. It's good.
That's pretty fast, I think.
I was in I was actually not in this conversation. I was listening, eavesdropping recently, and I lived overseas when Peter Brock died.
Yes.
And I didn't realise that he'd died outside of Perth, and I was listening into this conversation, people were talking about he'd actually died on their property where they had one of those rally races. And it happened to be on their land where he died. And I was like, oh, there you go. I didn't even know he died in WA. But Brocky was like king of the mountain, was he? A number of times in Bathurst.
He was
Is that what it's called? King of the Mountain?
King of the Mountain. 100%.
King of the Mountain.
You are.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm just going to...
That's my New South Wales background.
You are all over that shit. Yeah, well done. It's actually, for those of you who aren't in Australia, it's Australia's premier motor race, Bathurst 1000. And it's on this in December this year. So I think the 5th of December or something. It's quite amazing.
Correct?
Mount Panorama. The speeds that they go for such a long period of time to then have, split seconds between first and second sometimes is just insane. Because it goes for, 6 hours or something. And they go a lot faster than I do.
At that speed?
It is. Yeah, yep.
That would be extremely physically taxing.
Yes.
You win. You definitely had a more interesting week than me.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, I definitely didn't do nothing or whatever it was that I started with. I did some amazing things. Took a team of work colleagues out for dinner last night. That was really good. Yeah, it's been a very good week. I should think before I speak. I'm just not very good at that.
All good. All right. Well, shall we introduce ourselves?
Sure.
I'm Schmitty.
I'm Swanny.
And I'm Clarky. And together we are Trial by Wine.
Seamless.
Carla, do you have a story for us today?
I do indeed. Before we go down that path, why don't we discuss what we're drinking? So I've noticed Paul's got a glass. What's in your glass, darling?
Paul always has a glass, as most of our listeners will know by now.
I was thinking exactly the same thing, but I didn't want to say it.
Don't worry, I'll do it. Happy to put myself down. Well, this one comes with a little story. So a couple of weeks back, I think I told you we sold some stuff on Marketplace. And some of those things that we sold were fence pickets, because as we were going into lockdown last year, we thought we were going to end up not being able to leave home for months. As it turned out, so we bought a whole lot of fence pickets that we could paint during lockdown, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, as it turned out, we were essential workers, so we had to work all the way through. And these fence pickets have sat on our front porch for God knows how long. Anyway, we decided we would sell them because we couldn't be bothered doing that project anymore. And so we sold them off. Somebody bought them. She was super excited. She... telling us all about how they just moved into the area and they couldn't get fence pickets anywhere because there's a wood shortage, blah-de-blah-de-blah. So anyway, we said to them, here, there's some paint that we bought as well. You may as well have that. So they were really excited and took the paint gratefully, whatever the right word is there. And they then this week dropped off 2 bottles of wine to us to say thank you for our generosity, which was really lovely. And one of those is a Pepperjack Chardonnay from the Adelaide Hills. So I'm having a little Pepperjack Chardonnay from the Adelaide Hills. That was the long version.
Sounds good.
What about you two?
I'm having a gin and tonic. I'm on a Gordon's Pink Gin with a bit of tonic water. It's very exciting, but refreshing because it's quite warm where I am. And you, Carla?
Well, I've got to do school pickup this afternoon, so I'm just having one little vodka DC just to get me through my story, and then I can still be responsible mummy for pickup later. But
I thought you were going to say you're just having your standard vodka DC to get you through
to get me to pick up.
Yeah.
No, anyway, all right.
Is a vodka DC vodka and Diet Coke?
Oh God, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
In my days when I used to be a sort of what I'd call a much heavier drinker, it was probably about the most low-cal thing I could find, and that's probably for someone who has such a a lack of taste and is practically allergic to every wine or anything with histamines in it. It got me through many years. Many years, didn't it, Schmitty?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Never mind. All class.
Mm. Tell us about your story, Carla.
Today, the tale that I'm going to tell you, it could be called Hollywood Dream Gone Wrong, but I mean, that's a little bit too generic. And I think once we sort of get into the guts of the story, I think we'll realise it's really about a number of different players and their contribution to a particular person's life. And I think that's what we're going to focus on. So the entire period we're talking about really is only over a fairly short period of time. It's sort of from 1977 to 1980 that the lion's share of this tale happens. So it happens pretty quick overall, like from where we start to kind of where we finish. And we start in Vancouver, in British Columbia, Canada, and we're at a Dairy Queen, which I actually bothered to look up because I think that every female starlet has come from a Dairy Queen. So even as Australians, we know the term, but I don't know that we ever have been to a Dairy Queen or have ever really looked into it. We just know that they worked at a fast food joint. As it turns out, Dairy Queen suggests it was actually soft serve ice cream, which I would have guessed, and fast food. But I think...
There's a Dairy Queen, you wouldn't believe it, but there's actually a Dairy Queen in Glenroy.
No way.
Yes.
I don't know if it's the same chain,
Yes.
but yeah, and it's been there for years and years and years. Yeah, still there.
Well, in
On the
doing my
corner.
research, it started in 1940. So if it is one of their franchises, I don't know if they have it elsewhere in Australia. That's good to know. I didn't know that.
It's extraordinary, but yeah, it's there.
But you've all heard of Dairy Queen, haven't you?
Yeah,
Don't you know that?
yeah.
Don't you feel like every story
Yeah.
starts in a Dairy Queen? Of course.
Yeah, or a diner.
Oh, yeah, diner or Dairy Queen. So, of course. So we have a lovely young lady, and her name is Dorothy. At the time, her name was Dorothy Stratten, and her parents were Dutch. So they had immigrated to Canada, and they had this beautiful daughter. And she was 17 years old and had already been working at Dairy Queen for a couple of years because her parents had had become separated, did get separated. Don't know how to say that. And mum was struggling a bit as a single mother. So Dorothy was helping out by having a part-time job at Dairy Queen while she was at school. And that's where we meet a gentleman by the name of Paul Schneider. And Paul Schneider, was a bit of a player. Paul met Dorothy when he was 26 years old and she was 17. And he happened upon her, obviously, at the Dairy Queen. And immediately, I think he saw something that really took his eye. The reason being, because Paul was already a small-time pimp. And I use that word knowingly, and I use that word because that was he described himself as the Jewish pimp. So this guy...
Sorry, hang on.
Yeah, I know.
He only pimped out Jewish women? Or
No.
he only served Jewish men?
It means he was the Jew.
And was
He
a-
was
Which
the
one is
Jew.
it? Right, right.
Paul was the Jew.
And
And
he wasn't just catering to a particular
audience.
subset.
No,
An
not
audience,
at all.
Cohort, right.
Not at all. He had apparently already been down to
or a
LA and had
fetish.
tried, a bit of a hustle down there, and I think it just hadn't worked for him. But I think he'd seen the bright lights and he'd returned to Vancouver. And from what I can understand, he was doing a little bit of a side hustle as a pimp, but he did have a job as a promoter. So he was promoting clubs and he was also promoting cars at
Same
car
thing.
shows and stuff. So he had an income, but he was certainly supplementing it with the pimping on the side. And I'm led to believe that that's because he had quite extravagant tastes, and I don't think his income as a promoter was quite enough to accommodate a gentleman who liked to wear a full-length mink coat.
Oh,
And-
I'd like to wear a full-length mint coat. I love a good mint.
Jeepers.
Sorry, go
So
on.
I know, he was, I mean, if we could get dressed up for a 70s fancy dress party, Paul Schneider would be an absolutely brilliant person to base your caricature on. He wore a gold Star of David medallion that was huge. I mean, it was probably, 5-6 centimetres across. And it was encrusted with, I don't think it was diamonds, but it said jewels. But it was
Right.
huge Star of David. Huge, to the floor mink coat. Moustache, silk shirts. This guy, there was nothing sort of small time about him in the sense that he wanted to be seen. He wanted to be noticed. He wasn't trying to stay under the radar. Paul wanted people to notice him. He'd been, skinny, dorky Jewish guy from what I understand. his parents had split up. He'd had quite a tough upbringing, and he started to work out, started to get a bit of attention. And
that image really conjures for me the archetypal 70s porn star, though. You know, like
totally
with the mo and the everything. Just 70s porn star.
He had
I feel like
dabbled
there was a bit
with
of waka,
some gangs
waka, waka as he walked down the street.
There was definitely some of that going on. I think he really had big aspirations. He wanted to be the big man. I think he was very slight, quite short, and there's sort of talk about him having small man syndrome. But I mean, amongst other things, frankly, I think that he was, I don't know, he was not a good guy, and he certainly...
Did he wear heels? Did he have Cuban heels
sure
or something? Yeah. Platforms.
Well, should anybody in my family ever listen to this, a gentleman by the name of Russell John Swan, who also happens to be my father, was partial to a Cuban heel. So I don't know if he wore them very often, but he certainly did wear them to a fancy dress party once where he was dressed as a cowboy and he had black Cuban heel boots on. How cool is that? Probably 1979 if I had to hazard a guess. But very cool. Well done, Dad. Anyway, so in terms of trying to give you a little bit more idea about Paul, he wasn't involved in drugs. So he'd sort of tried to be involved in gangs in Vancouver to make more money, but a lot of it involved drugs, and he was very much against it. So because he just couldn't go there, it kind of limited him somewhat. So I think he just had to say with prostitution and pimping, you know? What a guy.
How do you try to be involved in gangs? Excuse me. I'd just like to be involved in your gang. Can I be in your gang, please?
Can I give you a quote? It said, when they were talking to a gang member, it said, a fellow gang member said this about Snyder. He never touched the drug trade. Nobody trusted him that much, and he was scared to death of drugs. He finally lost a lot of money to loan sharks, and the crowd, or the gang who we're talking about, hung him by his ankles from the 30th floor of a hotel. He had to leave town. That's before he'd even gone to LA the first time. So he then goes to LA. He tries pimping down there on the fringe of sort of Beverly Hills society, but he doesn't have great success. He has a few near misses with the law and basically runs back to Vancouver and thinks, you know what, I'll give it a shot up here. And guess what? He's sitting at the Dairy Queen, and this absolute knockout, Dorothy, is serving him, and guess what he thinks? Oh, hello. Aren't you something special? Perhaps you could be my golden ticket. So
I'm still trying to get my head around how, if you're a pimp and you're not into drugs, I mean, I don't know how that all works, but I kind of feel like in the movies all the time the pimp also has the drugs, and I feel like he's only half doing the job if he's not involved with the drugs.
I get the feeling he's not very good at any of this.
He's not committed enough, in your opinion, right?
He's not very good. He should have a career change.
Exactly
He's
right.
Not doing the best.
He doesn't understand how to leverage the drug. Yeah, yeah. You're just a try-hard pimp. You're dabbling.
I dress like a pimp. I'm not part of a gang. I don't do drugs. I'm not very successful when I go down to LA.
But I look like I've been dressed out of Casting Central.
Yeah. I've got the look going on. I just live a fancy dress lifestyle, I think, is what he really does.
Well, it's that whole thing about dress for the job you want.
Yes.
That's what he's been doing the whole time. Right. He's just not quite making it.
Yeah.
Oh, God. So it does take Dorothy's eye, though. So he approaches her, and for all intent and purpose, I mean, really, he starts to groom Dorothy. They eventually become boyfriend and girlfriend, but I mean, he was 26, she's 17, and he starts with, you know, the really obvious stuff of flattering her, working out what her insecurities are, starting to, you know, compliment her on what her insecurities are, buying her gifts. He took her to her year. I don't think you'd be allowed to do that these days, but I think he took her to her formal. And basically, he became part of their life, including, I think even her mum knew about him, and everyone was sort of okay with it. But, you know, I guess he was seen to be successful. I don't suppose he presented himself as a pimp at home to the mother-in-law, but he became a presence in her life. And they became a couple and they became lovers when she was 17 and he was 26.
It
But
was
he-
the 70s.
It's quite a
It was
romantic
the
story,
70s.
isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So
We met at the Dairy Queen. He was a promoter. I was a Dairy Queen chick. And we fell in
It
love.
says here, which
His
I
Star
really
of
do
David
like.
got me.
It said he didn't keep a low profile in that he drove a black Corvette, wore a mink coat, and a Star of David encrusted with jewels that hung on his chest. He was called the Jewish pimp, and he cultivated that. So I'm not saying that that's what he's called. He called himself that. He was known as that, and quite proudly. That was, it's what he wanted to be known as, and he was proud of it.
What's his
I'm
gangster
surprised he's got a black Corvette. If he doesn't do drugs and he's not in a gang. Like, where do you get that money from?
Well, I don't know. I guess pimping, and perhaps you're a little bit of your promoting work. I don't know. Promoting work. Interesting.
Interesting. I might have to do a career change so I can get a Corvette.
Perhaps. So he had a plan, and he already had, big dreams for Dorothy because she was going to be his meal ticket. So probably towards the end of 77, early 78, when their relationship is progressing, he convinces her to have professional nude photographs taken.
Ugh.
And she's quoted, I've seen her interviewed, and I think it was actually a radio interview in this particular instance, and she says, "Oh, look, I'd never taken my clothes off for anybody else. I would never normally do that. And it took him about 2 weeks to convince me, but then I did." And of course, those photographs were sent directly to Playboy.
Playboy, I was going to say, has this got a Hugh Hefner connection?
What?
Yes. And the reason they were sent was because there was going to be a competition. So in 1978, so remember they've only met late 77, so this is not even like a year into their relationship probably, it's early on. Playboy hosted a great Playmate hunt, a contest to scout a new Playmate, which was going to celebrate, I think, the 25th anniversary issue of Playboy. So
Did she know her photos were going
convinces-
there?
She may have done. I haven't read to say otherwise. I suspect she
Okay.
did because he kept saying to her, "You're bigger than this, you're better, that you're going to be a star, you're incredible, you're beautiful.
Right.
I'm going to make you, the next Marilyn Monroe. I'm going to make you, a superstar." So I suspect she did know, and I suspect that was how they got her mother to sign off on the photographs because she was I think she was 18 by this point, but she was so young that in Canada there was a rule that she wasn't allowed to have the photographs taken. So her own mother had signed off and said it was okay.
I thought you were going to say it's how they
feel
got her own mother to also pose with her.
Oh,
I was like, oh my God.
Oh, goodness. I feel like
But
he's
I mean,
got a
I think
Cert
that
3 in
they'd be-
shamanism.
he's got a Cert 3 in something, in pimpism.
Pimpery.
So she... Pimpery.
Oh, I like that. A certificate 3 in pimpery.
Add it to
Yes.
the college.
You should introduce that as well. Yeah.
Oh. So they have these photographs taken. Her mother has approved for them to be, sent off, I guess. Not so much probably taken, but certainly sent into Playboy. And when they arrive, they're very excited. They think that she's got great potential. So they fly her down to LA. So it's the first time she's been on a plane. Certainly the first time she's been in a limo. I mean, obviously she's been in Paul's black Corvette. But I mean, I imagine it would have just been a whole other world from, the Dairy Queen at Vancouver. So when she gets there, there was a lady who was the magazine's former West Coast editor. Don't you love how they always say that on American shows? Yeah. And she'd worked with Hugh for over 40 years, and she said about Dorothy, "She was a total babe in the woods. I cannot remember another playmate being that. I don't want to say naive, inexperienced, unused to her surroundings, and not used to thinking that she was really beautiful." Well, that just sounds like a child to me, but anybody else might have something else to add. But I'm pretty sure that lots of young girls would have been like that.
Yeah.
It's just,
you kind
there
of
you go.
hope so,
Story
don't
of
you?
exploitation.
I called her a woman.
we found an
child.
18-year-old.
Photographer shot her said, yeah.
Oh,
like this, it
what?
She had a statuesque look, but when you talked to her, she was still like a little girl. And I'm like, this. Do people still say this stuff? I mean, it's so of the time where it's like, yeah, because she still was a little girl with a hot body, and you all went, here we go, let's go to town because we know what people like. But it did remind me of our friend Janelle. Remember Janelle, who was in our social media?
She was just too pretty.
She was just too pretty. But remember when she was so pretty, and she was like a child as well. I was like,
She
Janelle.
talked like a child, didn't she?
Yeah.
Did she have a strange little high-pitched, weird little girl's voice or something?
Yes, precisely. Yeah. Dorothy is sent back to Vancouver. She's obviously back with Schneider. This was, that was just quite a quick trip. And they wait. They wait to see if she's won the, what was it called? The Playmate Hunt. The Great Playmate Hunt. Turns out she didn't win. And that was because somebody thought that she probably wouldn't be able to handle it with the lack of experience that she had. So luckily, somebody in the Playboy Corporation actually read that probably correctly, because whoever became the Playmate Hunt winner was going to have like a massive, promotional tour and everything that comes with it. Having said that, they were so taken with her that she was made the Playmate for August 1979. So it was really quick. Remember, she's already becoming a Playmate the following year. She was shy, but she needed more grooming. So she had Paul in one ear, get your gear off, darling. But the Playboy Corporation could see that she was probably too young and too naive to handle the celebrity that would come with her being a Playmate. And I think if you think back to that era, I mean, we're a bit too young, but I mean, we've seen enough and we've heard enough to know that it was so important. You were such a star if you were a Playmate.
It was a big deal.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. A stepping stone for lots of other different things. And remember, before there was social media or anything like that, a magazine, and it had staying power. So not only was it under, the bridge under the creek where all the boys would look at it, over the following years
Pamela,
or your dad.
Like I know many years later, but wasn't Pamela Anderson a Playboy bunny as well?
Oh, probably. They practically all were at one point. There was a whole period of time.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. And I think by this point, I don't know when it comes into fashion and out of fashion, but it had to do with the way Hugh positioned it. Was he ended up sort of turning it slightly so that he would try and make this suggestion that the women wanted to do it as well. It wasn't just for male gratification. It was empowering a woman to become a centerfold. That might be a bit early. I think this was probably too early in the picture for that to be the case. I think that probably happened maybe in the 80s and 90s, but at this stage I think it was just get your gear off and look hot, and the rest of it's kind of irrelevant. But there's already some
and try
success.
not to act like a child.
Don't speak like one.
But also you got to remember that it's all a bit it was just window dressing, because everyone knows that men buy Playboy for the articles.
That's so true.
That's right.
It's like the ads in newspapers nowadays, because they're just full of ads and you've got to flick through them. It's exactly the same with those magazines. God, so many pictures. I just want to read for a little bit.
I just want to read a really good article about Bathurst or something. Yeah.
That's right.
So we've got... This is a really good one for you today, Playboy and Rev Cars. I'm like, wow, you must be... red-blooded males.
Time
anyway,
well.
Yes, we did time it well. I don't even know who you are anymore. I don't even know who you are. So, Paul and Dorothy moved to LA, obviously, on the success of her winning, the accolades of Playboy, really. They want to foster her. And so what they do is she's Playmate Pet of the Month, but they also give her a job at the Playboy Club, which was in Century City in Los Angeles. But she's so young, she can't serve alcohol. So she is basically a door bunny and, a meter and greeter, and is not allowed either alcohol because she's still underage.
Just sit there and look hot and try not to speak like a child.
Totally, just look good. But she is attracting all of the attention that someone who's about to, try and embark on a career as such, would want. So certainly at the Playboy Club, she's becoming more and more popular.
Every dirty old man in town's hanging around her like flies.
Correct. And the person who's truly hanging around her is Paul Snider. He is everywhere. Every step she takes, he is there because he sees this as their success. He was the one who discovered her. He was the one who groomed her. He was the one who introduced her to Playboy. So I have to add at this point, and it was only when I, read stuff and the research and sort of coming to it much later. But it's important to note that as a Canadian, he did not have a green card. So he wasn't actually able to work. So he didn't even think, he wasn't planning on working independently. His whole livelihood was always going to be Dorothy and the management of her and whatever that was. So he owned her, he managed her, he and Dorothy were one. And he'd always set it up to be that way. And he'd always said that to her, we will be this. This is, us is the product. It's not you, it's us. I'm the reason for your success.
Yeah, early while you were talking through,
we're a team.
So this is an ownership thing.
Oh, totally. We are a team. Mm. If she was at a photo shoot, she was on the phone to him constantly. Yeah.
There's no I in team. It's fine.
And by all accounts, and every single thing that I've read or heard, there sure is. She totally trusted him. She did love him. And she was really thankful because he was the one who discovered her. And it was all because of Paul that she was able to do any of this, was what she thought. And he certainly reminded her of that concept. Yeah.
Didn't know
this man, not a boy, this man has discovered me and done this for me, for us. And she's totally thought that any success that she was having, she totally owed that to him. And she was very thankful, very loyal. She wasn't out there trying to find someone else. She loved him and she was totally into it. She thought that her success was his success, was their success. It wasn't about her on her own. So,
Paul, if I take my clothes off again, will you take me to McDonald's
they were married,
for lunch?
In 1979. Now, what I have to do before I sort of go any further with the marriage is I have to tell you who had an issue with their marriage, because this is what Hugh Hefner had an issue with their marriage.
Hugh. He's a good guy. He can
read the situation. Can you
He's a man with morals.
Because what had happened is...
just wants to look out for the girls. That's right.
What did it say? Takes one to know one. So, dear Dorothy had become so incredibly popular that she started to become invited to the parties at the Playboy Mansion. And by all accounts, going to a party at the Playboy Mansion in the late 70s was akin to probably going to, I don't know, the Met Gala now or something like that. It was not just hot women. It was important directors. It was, movie stars. It was sports people. It was, the idea that you were invited into that sort of enclave of A-list, celebrities was something that everybody coveted, even people who, perhaps were not necessarily interested in Playboy as nude women, but... it was a place to be seen and be seen amongst that sort of group of people who were in the public eye. So Dorothy was a total hit at the Playboy Mansion. Who was not a hit?
Dress code bikinis? Is that...
Absolutely. Yep. So she and Paul would go there together. And what I've loved about this, and you have to go and... There's a documentary... it's not really a documentary, I guess it's probably a teleseries by ABC News, and they interview lots of what were the secretaries, so actually administrative staff of the Playboy Corporation, I think you'd call it, at the time. They, and Hugh as well, they talk openly about their feelings for Paul. And there is not one positive thing. He's called, a douchebag, a sleaze. He was despised. They just... could see that he was a total hustler. They called him small time. And I think that was the biggest issue. It wasn't actually that he was a pimp or whatever else. It was the fact that he tried so hard that really grated with the rest of them, because he would come in, this sort of small man with this statuesque, beautiful blonde, who they had already, seen as they were going to take her into their fold.
So
and then
like
you've got
Tom Cruise.
Then you've got Paul literally, claws into her, don't forget about me, So you can see that sort of dynamic and that conflict between Hugh and big business, the real deal, big time playboy, and little pimp going, how don't, exclude
you
me.
don't belong here, mate.
Yeah, we're part of the deal. It's not Dorothy, it's the Dorothy and Paul. It's us. I'm her manager. So of course Paul sees that that's happening, and he's very, very clever to get married and, to make sure that he's got Dorothy.
He's hooked her. Yeah.
Yeah. And I read that in
I
places
feel like
that
they'd
she
totally
said
be saying, you don't even do drugs and you're not part of a gang. You're never going to be big. Just go away.
I mean, there's lots of footage of him, and there's lots of footage like where they're at parties, and there's one where Dorothy's doing a signing after she's probably made Playboy. It might have actually been, anyway, we'll get on to that. It might have been, she actually does become Playboy Maid of the Year versus the month. And she has there's a lot of promotion that goes with it, and she's signing autographs, whatever else, and you can see Paul trying to grab her hand. There's footage of him. Seriously, it is so obvious that he is trying to control and be involved in everything. There's footage where he's talking to Hugh, and Hugh is dismissive. It's awkward. He's just not wanted there.
Does Hugh have a similar look on his face like Prince Charles had when he met our Prime Minister Scott Morrison the other day in Glasgow?
Oh, I didn't see that! Oh, darling, I didn't see it. I wish I had have. I must go have a look.
You should imagine that the answer to that question is yes. That Prince Charles and Hugh Hefner had a similar look on their face.
Oh, gosh. So things are going very nicely for Dorothy. And through her connections with Hugh starts to look at sort of how she can manage her career. And I think this is something they do for a lot of the girls. They give them business managers plus also a money manager. When I say give them, they're not giving them. Obviously, they're agents and they pay for them. But they do try and set them up so that there is a degree of, administrative responsibility, I guess, that the girls clearly don't have. But I would imagine that displeased Paul even more, because all of a sudden, all of the money that she's starting to earn goes to a separate channel before he would be able to access it. Correct. So
it's even more irrelevant.
Small time pimp is really struggling. He did hit on other women in the grotto, and that was an issue. And the Playboy
that's a horrible phrase.
That wasn't a euphemism.
Yeah, it's a horrible phrase.
Sorry about that.
Hits on other women in the grotto.
Someone hit on the grotto.
I hate it when someone hits on my grotto without my permission.
Oh, if I get hit in the grotto one more time.
It did work to Playboy's advantage, though, because what they were able to do was they said, you're simply not allowed here, because apparently he'd also been going without Dorothy. But they said you are not allowed on the premises without Dorothy. So they were already starting to try and push him further and further away. And they were starting to advise her and sort of say, you've got to be careful of this guy, and, you sure he's right for you? That's why the idea of sort of separating business and giving her the managers and setting that up, you can see where they're trying to, without cutting them off, send them on different paths. So sure as hell, Paul knows he's got to get married, so she goes off and marries Paul against Playboy's wishes, against Hugh's wishes, which I just think is funny because Hugh calls him a pimp.
Small time.
A small time pimp.
Yeah.
So we're in June of 1979 and they've just got married, and I think that at this point Dorothy's quite happy with that arrangement because she feels like everything's starting to blossom a bit, and she's so thankful because of Paul. This has all happened because of Paul. And he's very quick to remind her that they... Yeah.
It's all happened because she's hot and there's lots of dirty men in the world.
That's pretty much the bottom line, isn't it? But he's very quick.
I forgot this is an audio show because I rolled my eyes enormously. That's a bit pointless, isn't it?
Yeah, none of the listeners would laugh at that.
No. And he's very, very quick to remind her of this at the time that they're married, and I certainly think had been doing it beforehand and, after, that he calls it their lifetime bargain, that they're together. That's their, their thing. It's a lifetime bargain, darling Dorothy. Exactly.
If you were hot and a woman, this wouldn't work.
if you had any experience in it and enough self-confidence to say, hang on a minute, this is all about me, then things would be different.
After they're married, I like this bit because towards the end of 1979, she makes an appearance on 2 different Playboy productions. I mean, could you even imagine watching this on TV at the moment? One is Playboy's Roller Disco. Oh no, it's the same show. Sorry, Playboy's Roller Disco, and Pajama Party. Having said that, I do watch Love Island, which my kids give me a lot of shit about, and that's fair enough. So maybe I'm just watching it. Maybe I'm just watching a modern day version of it in many respects.
Yeah, but do you remember when? Do you remember when we were in the UK Colour and we had a party for Claire? It was a farewell party because she was going to Egypt, and the theme was something like glamour or or Egypt. And I remember you ringing me saying, you really need a single-minded proposition on this.
I do remember that. It's not glamour or Egypt. Pick one or the other.
One or the other. You can't have both. That's right. So I'm sorry. It's a roller disco or it's a pajama party.
It
can't be both. That's right.
Thank you. Yes. That's exactly right. I'd misread that before because I just assumed there were 2 separate thoughts and 2 separate themed parties. But no, Playboy's Roller Disco and Pajama Party.
I feel like if you're roller discoing, though, you can't do that in your pajamas. Like, not in your, long flannelette type pajamas, but more so in your skimpy little lingerie pajamas.
Yeah, I have a feeling I can picture those pajamas.
I have a feeling that the brief for the costume department would have been pretty much the same for both. Playboy's Roller Disco, flesh, Pajama Party, flesh, and lots of it. So it wasn't like they couldn't have done 2 separate briefs. Exactly.
When we say clothes, we just mean something that goes up your ass crack and covers your front bum and some nipple tassels.
Yes.
That's right.
Something that will try to discourage us from groping you in the grotto.
What I do like about that is, as a result of her being on that, now this is one for Australian audiences because I actually think we might have even seen these episodes, she landed 2 sort of small acting gigs. One was in TV show Fantasy Island, and the other one was Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Both of them.
No way.
What? I know. So we've probably seen Dorothy in action.
The plane.
We probably have.
Exactly.
To plane.
Yes. So although they were just small parts, that would have been very important. I mean, as Australians, even of our vintage, to know those 2 programs is quite significant, right? That would definitely be a stepping stone to something, a crossover to actresses, which is, what Hugh had seen for her and certainly
And later what happens for Pamela? Because Pamela was definitely cover bunny for Playboy. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's exciting times. And this is when Paul starts to get a little bit nervous because she, as he said, this is mine, she is mine, the success is mine, and he wanted an ownership of her, and that was becoming increasingly difficult because although they were married, everything was going through management, not directly to him, so he had to liaise with other people to get money or do anything.
Someone's going to knock him off, aren't they, with like a can of Mortine and a lighter?
Yeah.
I don't think you even need the lighter. He's a little dry.
That's right.
He's
a mosquito.
That's right.
Yeah. Can't even, not part of a gang and doesn't do drugs. Call yourself a pimp.
Not that we're actually endorsing doing drugs as making you tough, but he's just a bit of a failure. Yeah.
But also, we're not endorsing being a pimp, but if you're going to be one, like,
do it properly.
Put both feet in. Like, get some commitment.
That's right.
All right.
Be the small-time fly.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the end of 1979. So things are looking good for Dorothy, and 1980 looks to be even better because they are going to announce that she is the Playmate of the Year. So early in the year, like January, she works on a massive shoot for that campaign for Playmate of the Year, and life is good. At the mansion, she runs into a man called Peter. Oh, now that I'm trying to think about it, I'll say it incorrectly. Bogdanovich. I need to say it lots of times so I say it correctly. But Peter Bogdanovich is actually a world-famous movie director. And when I tell you the movies that he directed, you may actually remember who he is. It's just that we probably haven't heard about him for a while. So he was the real deal. He would be considered, I'm not sure if you'd quite call it Hollywood royalty, but in the 1970s, directors were king. They were the most important person within the movie industry. And that still might be the case now, but it certainly was at that time. And he was responsible for a movie called The Last Picture Show, and it was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Director. And it was during that movie that he met and left his wife for Sybil Shepherd. So he was married to Sybil Shepherd at that time.
Yeah, right.
And left his wife for Sybil Shepherd.
For Sybil Shepherd. So Sybil
right.
features in the Last Picture Show.
In The Last Picture Show, right.
Yeah. He then went on to make What's Up, Doc, which was a hugely popular comedy. Yeah.
Oh my God, I loved it.
With Ryan O'Neal and Barbara Streisand. Yeah.
Yep.
And if you go and look at any of the trailers for these films, the way the movies were even promoted in that day was they were showing the director. They were talking about, here's the director, and here he is with, the talent, and they're interacting with him. They're on set in San Francisco. He was a big deal. He was a big deal. So What's Up, Doc was hugely popular, still
Massive.
Considered a great comedy.
Massive. Yeah.
Correct. And then he goes on to do Paper Moon. And Paper Moon, you remember, is Tatum O'Neal wins the Oscar for the youngest supporting actress ever. It's a black and white film. She's with her father, Ryan O'Neal.
Yeah.
Does that ring any bells? It rang bells to me. Yeah.
It does.
I love how you say you'll remember that. Like, I don't think I've seen that Barbara Streisand one. I don't even know that.
Watch What's Up, Doc? It's very funny. Yeah.
Wasn't Tatum O'Neal married to John McEnroe?
Correct. Yep.
Yes, look at that. I do know something about pop culture.
You just got a pop culture stamp from me. A star.
You cannot be serious. Did I really?
But what's really interesting about Peter Bogdanovich, I can't say his name, Bogdanovich, is that he is everything that Paul is not. So when he meets Dorothy, he is actually not at the height of his success, because this is now like the late 70s, and a lot of this stuff happens sort of early to mid 70s, and he's not the height. He's now looking for new opportunities and to create something new. I think things have quietened down a little bit, but still considered a real gun when it comes to movies, and certainly someone you'd want to be in contact with.
When you say new opportunities, do you mean new hot chicks to put in his movies?
Well, what a coincidence! It just so happens.
Deirdre
what a coincidence! Dorothy Stratten. Upon meeting Dorothy at the Playboy Mansion, he is totally besotted, just utterly taken with her. And a lot of people described her that she'd sort of make time stand still. What I find is when she speaks, when she's on camera, she does have that very, like a little girl, where when she talks, it's so slow and so quiet, and you've kind of got no option but to sort of slow down. And it's not so much that she stopped you in place; it's so quiet.
Marilyn Monroe had a similar effect on me.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like that. Yes.
Innocent, they wanted to
Totally.
look after her, but she was a sex bomb at the same time,
Completely. Naivety that they just love. So he met her, was totally mesmerised by her, and as a result of their initial meeting and subsequent meetings, he created a role for her in a film.
No way.
Didn't
see that coming.
No, you didn't even mention it earlier, did you? No. And this is all in such a relatively short period of time. So we're still talking about the beginning of 1980. So he goes off and he creates I think he already had it, to be fair. He perhaps just includes her in it or creates a role for her within the movie. And the movie is called They All Laughed, and it was, I guess, a romantic comedy, but was being shot in New York City, and the star was actually Audrey Hepburn.
Wow.
Yep.
Jeez.
And they say the movie was very much autobiographical, and it was about, Bogdanovich falling in love. And the person who is cast to play the person that's like Peter Bogdanovich is actually John Ritter, who I also think sadly died, didn't he? Wasn't he murdered? Does that ring a bell with anyone? John Ritter, you'd know him if you saw him. Maybe search it up, I'm not sure. Have a look. But it's clear that...
Oh, no, he was in that show. He had I know who John Ritter is. Yes, he died, but he had a little heart thing that no one knew about, and he died.
Did he live with two girls in an apartment or something? What was that show? There was like a sitcom he was in, maybe.
Yeah, no, he was doing, wasn't it Three's Company?
Yes, that's it.
Three's Company, yeah.
But if you saw a picture of him, if you looked at it, you'd recognise who he was. Yeah. So there were some, big names in this film, and she had a speaking part. I don't think it was massive, but she was important, and it was about falling in love. And, even Peter comes out and says later, it was totally autobiographical. I basically was falling in love with her. And in a certain scene, he says to Dorothy's character, if I asked you to marry me, would you say yes? And she says, well, yes, when my divorce comes through. So it was all headed that way. And she could also see things were not going so well with dear old Paul. And what they did was they ended up creating a closed set. So that's only for cast and crew. And that's how they kept him in LA while she went to New York.
Just to get rid of Paul.
Well, pretty much. I suspect that was a pretty big part of it. And they certainly told him that. Because I don't know how else they would have kept him away, frankly. He's too persistent. Yeah, so as part...
air guard is how you keep flies away.
Okay, so on March 22, 1980... Dorothy flies to New York to begin work on They All Laughed with Peter Bogdanovich. Do you know what? It was actually the 5th movie that she'd starred in. She had little bitty pieces, but all of that had happened within 18 months. They'd only been in LA a very short period of time. So you start to realise, in terms of her rising star, how quickly it was rising. And these sort of people, so she had Hugh Hefner in one corner, Peter Bogdanovich in another corner, and sort of literally grabbing her ankles. Paul on her ankles, crawling up the back of her legs in another. So you see these three men.
In the naughty corner, not the star corner.
Yeah, he was in the small time corner. So apparently, upon arrival in New York, the affair with Peter Bogdanovich started immediately. And they fell madly in love with each other. And during the shooting of the film, she moved out of the hotel where the cast were, and she moved in and was living with him. And Paul was in contact, but he was finding it increasingly difficult to get hold of her. Surprise, surprise. And he was really starting to unravel. And one of the reasons he was really panicked was because he had no income. So he had to get permission from
no green card.
And no green card. So what he did was, as a result of her winning the Playmate of the Year, she had a huge cachet of prizes that she won. She had won like a Jaguar. She won, she probably won another mink coat. There was jewelry. It was unbelievable because you think of it in terms of sponsorship. The day that she won, it was announced, she was on Johnny Carson that night, and he asks her what was the prize, and she recounts like about 6-7 different things that are all, not $100,000, but in those days, I think the car was quoted as being, I think, a Jaguar, $26,000, which must have been a huge amount at the time. So dear old Paul finds himself a bit strapped for cash, so he starts selling off some of her prizes so that he's got some money. But he's got one last sort of trump card, which Dorothy had promised him that she would do like a poster. And I know that sounds kind of feeble these days, but if you think back to the 70s and what were in, children's bedrooms, teenagers' bedrooms, think of the Farrah Fawcett picture that, every teenager had, or whether it be posters were a big thing.
Yeah, they're massive.
Exactly. And because of the sheer circulation.
I think you'll find they were a rather cornerstone type device used in, I wanted to say Schindler's List, but that's not the film I'm talking about. Shawshank Redemption. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, what, to cover the whole behind it?
The hole that he's digging out to get away. So there was a
Yes.
Raquel Welch or whatever. So yeah, you're right.
Yes.
Posters were massive. Yeah. Anyway, not in Schindler's List though.
Not in Schindler's
I always
List.
get the wrong thing, and it's always so inappropriately wrong. Anyway, keep going.
Although he was the Jewish pimp, so
He was the Jewish pimp.
maybe that's
Oh, that's so wrong.
Too far?
Anyway, yeah, I feel like that.
So anyway, I think
Carla
that
can moderate for us.
I think that Paul thought the poster project, as it was called, was going to be the thing that would make him enough money. And, he'd also sort of started looking slightly elsewhere for other Dorothys. So he knew things were not going well, clearly, but he wasn't prepared to give up any ownership that he could. And I think he figured that the poster was probably his best chance at that point, in conjunction with trying to find another Dorothy. So he was out there
and
meeting
he
other young
became
girls.
Dairy Queen's best customer.
Yeah, pretty much. I did see some footage where he had met a young girl called, I forgot her name now, Laurie, I think her name was. Again, a really beautiful blonde. And I felt sorry for this woman. She's still alive. They're interviewing her and she's saying, Paul told me this and Paul told me that. She ended up becoming a flatmate of Paul's around about this time. And he was sort of trying to groom her for Playboy. But everyone was saying, but she was no Dorothy. Imagine hearing that all your bloody life. Anyway, so Paul's desperate. Paul goes to Dorothy. I don't know if he got to go to New York to do this. I think that he actually did. And he goes in with the image that they've chosen for the poster, or he's chosen for the poster. And through advice from Playboy, and I suspect Peter as well, which is saying, you don't want to be that person anymore. Now you're becoming a serious actress. She shuts it down and she says, no, we're not going to do the poster. And that's his sort of last trump card. That's all he really had that was connecting him to making money, separate to, say, a movie or separate to the Playboy contracts, whatever else. And all of a sudden, that's it. He has no chance of making any money out of her for the foreseeable. So that's when things really start to shift. He goes back to LA and he's despondent. As the girl who I was mentioning before is now his flatmate, and she said he's sad, he's crying, he's writing songs and playing on his guitar about how he loves Dorothy, but he's finding it difficult to get hold of her, and she meanwhile is in New York.
Himself independently without care for others.
Oh, God. That chestnut.
Right, so things are really falling apart. We've got Bogdanovich and Stratton in New York, and they've got people advising Bogdanovich to be careful. They're already worried about what Paul Snider is capable of because, small town, small man,
town's gonna
Jewish
do.
pimp, he's going to come for you.
He's either going to pimp you to death or promote you to death.
They're the two options available to you.
That's interesting because he seems like such a pathetic character that it's interesting that people are warning Bogdanovich, who's big,
yes,
to be worried about this guy.
Well, they just think that they know how desperate he is and that he's,
but
he's got no class. They just think, he's capable of anything. So just, be aware of that.
No gun laws.
But he's proved himself to be so incapable of everything. That's why I find that an interesting kind of concept.
So around this
He
time,
might
Dorothy...
grope him in the grotto to death.
That will come up later, actually.
It's a little bit like another way of saying nut punching.
A grope in the grotto is like a nut punch, but I much prefer nut punch. That's the ultimate.
Well, yeah, way better.
What's interesting is Dorothy is still a really sort of empathetic character in the sense that she's writing letters to Snider saying, first of all, she's saying, she wants to space things aren't working out. And by the end of production on the film, she sends him a letter that basically says she's, what does it say? That they are now physically and financially separated. So she's basically saying it's over. But she wants to be friends. She wants it to be amicable. And she is going to look after him. She's going to do, a deal. And she's using her her financial management to help her settle some kind of arrangement with Paul so that he is, I wouldn't quite say taken care of, but, that he is, he gets something for the time that...
So he goes away.
And she's very happy to do that. She's not trying... Well, yeah, but so... I think for her, she feels guilty and, she can recognise that, it was him, it was Paul, that she thinks was totally responsible for any success that she's had. And she's not trying to upset him, and she's certainly trying to do what she thinks is the right thing by him. But she's certainly now getting better advice, and the people around her are starting to say to her that they can look after that for her. She doesn't need to go back and speak to him. Let them take care of that. But she's not listening. She's not listening. She wants to do it herself.
Because at some point, she probably thought she loved him. Or
I'm sure she did, yeah. I'm sure she did.
Maybe she still does, just not as much as she loves Peter Bogdanovich or whatever his name is.
Bogdanovich. So he has a brief affair with an old girlfriend, but now sort of convinced that the affair with Bogdanovich is going to be something a bit more serious. Snyder hires a private detective to gather information on his wife's infidelity. As I said before, he's
a fucking hypocrite.
He's not so small time.
But he needs to pay, okay? He needs to pay the detective. So, again, he's having to rely on selling the prize winnings that Dorothy had acquired. Yeah. Obviously at a loss, just to get some quick cash so he can pay the detective and also just pay for, his own extravagant lifestyle that certainly was probably a champagne lifestyle on a beer budget. So it's not looking good for Paul. Meanwhile, production's wrapped mid-July, and then Bogdanovich and Stratten actually go to London for a 2-week holiday before returning to LA. And on returning to LA, she doesn't go back to the house that she'd shared with Small Time Pim. Small Time Jewish Pim. They they rent her a Beverly Hills apartment, but she actually never goes and lives in that. She actually moves directly into Bogdanovich's mansion in Bel Air. So from this point, Schneider's finding it near on impossible to get in touch with Dorothy. And early on in early August, he hides in the shadows outside Bogdanovich's mansion with a handgun, planning to shoot anybody who comes out. Luckily,
I knew
nobody
there
comes
was a
outside,
gun in there.
So after many hours, he just gives up. He does drive up into the hills afterwards.
Start shooting anyway.
No, he thinks about shooting himself, but in the end, he doesn't even do that. He goes home and tells a friend that he was thinking about doing it. And at this sort of same time...
Can't even do that, right.
He then starts to look... Oh, then he has to return that gun. I read somewhere. That was a borrowed gun. And then he returns that gun, and then he becomes quite desperate. Correct. Who borrows a gun, doesn't get the job done, then goes, oh, I didn't end up using it. There you go, you can have it back.
Can I just
Mate,
borrow
you didn't
your gun
even
'cause
fire
I
a
want to
shot.
shoot my wife. I want to shoot my wife and maybe her lover.
Yeah.
Can I just borrow your gun? Because it won't
give it
implicate
back.
you at all. Don't worry.
Because they make me feel pathetic.
Do they make him feel pathetic, or do they
scratch
just
the serial number
do
off?
they just hold a mirror up to him and he recognises that he is pathetic?
Yeah, he does it all himself.
Well, no, because someone like him wouldn't be able to feel pathetic without being made to feel pathetic.
Okay.
Can I borrow your gun
gun?
your platforms so that the CCTV doesn't show it as me when they have the height register as I walk out the door? They'll go, oh, he's way bigger than Small Town.
Maybe the person he borrowed the gun from was actually in a circus, and he said, "Can I borrow your stilts as well as your gun?" And because I need to be at least 3 feet taller than I am. And the problem was he was a bit wobbly on the stilts because he didn't know how to use them, and that's why he couldn't shoot at anyone. But luckily, no one came out anyway.
I think it's
And
fair to
also,
say
could you come along and juggle some balls and play some crazy music, because this is going to be ridiculous.
Eat some fire while you're at it. Could you just swallow some fire?
Yes, and do some lion taming.
Yeah.
We're about to get to the crime, people. Come on.
Oh my God! All right.
We're about to get to the crime.
Oh, sorry. Focus.
But remember,
focus.
Focus, everyone.
it's a Paul. It's
Enough
a Paul
clowning
Snyder
around.
crime. Right.
This
So, very sadly, there were quite a few. Stop it, Paul. There were quite a few signs that people potentially could have picked up on, including he took his private detective with him and asked the private detective to buy the gun. The guy said no. So he ends up buying a gun through a local classifieds ad, and he gets a 12-gauge pump action
The Trading
shotgun
Post.
from the equivalent of the Trading Post.
What do they want for it, Dale?
Marketplace.
Telling people he was going to take
Tell
up
him he's
hunting.
dreaming.
Jousting sticks.
During a conversation with friends, an otherwise jovial Snyder casually brought up the subject of playmates who had unexpectedly died. In particular, he spoke of Claudia Jennings, an actress and former Playmate of the Year who had been killed in a car accident the year before. Snyder made several morbid remarks to his companions related to the problems at Playboy magazine caused by her death, including a comment about how the editors will pull nude photos of a dead playmate from the next issue, quote, if there's time. So he's clearly not in a great headspace. Meanwhile, Dorothy has a meeting on, must be August 14th, with her business manager. And the business manager, towards the end of their meeting, makes a fateful observation that his young client Dorothy, doesn't have to spend any more time with him negotiating anything. She says that she could avoid spending time with her husband by handing off the remaining separation and divorce negotiations to her lawyer. But Dorothy replies that the process would go easier if she dealt with Snyder personally, explained that he was being nice about everything, and finally added, I'd like to remain his friend. So everybody is saying to her, don't go. And even people from Playboy are in touch with her saying, other playmates who are her friends and said, just stay away from Paul. Don't provoke him. Just get your management to look after
Wouldn't
that.
we all?
We've all been there. Is that what you say?
What did you say, Paul?
Well, wouldn't we all like to be friends with Paul?
I thought he said Weevil. What did you say,
Because
Paul?
she still wants to be friends with Paul.
Weevil. I thought he was going to say Weevil.
I said, no. You said she wants to stay friends with Paul, and don't we all?
I said Weevil. Then I thought, maybe he said Weevil. Weevil. So on August 14th, Dorothy has a meeting planned with Small Time to discuss a settlement. And she's met with her business manager earlier that morning. He's advised her that he doesn't want her to go. She doesn't need to go. She can use one of her lawyers. And she's also been told expressly by both Hugh Hefner and Peter Bogdanovich. I was calling him Peter Bog. That she mustn't have anything to do with him, to stay away from him. So she secretly goes. She doesn't tell them that she's going, and she goes anyway. So his flatmates, at that point in the house that he had shared with Dorothy, he has two other people living with him. Excuse me, and they both know that she's coming over. So to give them space, they both leave the house. I think one of them was actually his girlfriend's, and the other girl went out for the day. And they leave the house. So Dorothy arrives.
When you say he has two people living with him, you mean two women?
No, actually, one's a man. One's actually a doctor now, so it was just a young guy. Their surnames were Kushner and Lorman. Laurie was the girl who he was trying to actually make into a new Dorothy, another Playboy model, and the other one was just a friend of his, I think, or theirs.
Right.
Anyway, so Dorothy arrives at the house about midday, just before, and then, the flatmates are out and they don't return until about 8 o'clock at night. And when they get there, they see both of their cars are out the front. And one of the things that's quite interesting to note is Snyder still had a Mercedes and his number plate was star 80.
What, Star of David 80?
No, maybe, I don't know. I don't think you could fit that on, but perhaps there is a nod there.
Starro D80 it should have been, but anyway.
Dorothy's car's there as well. So both Kushner and Lorman, who are the flatmates, assume that they're probably reconciled. So they leave them, and there's the bedroom door shut, and they leave them to it, and they're just watching upstairs, assuming that there's a reconciliation. You know what I mean by reconciliation going on downstairs. But there's
sexy
hours
hands.
Sexy time. Sexy time.
Bit of sexy times happening, except
There wasn't sexy time happening. What had happened was...
You lie?
I'm getting to the point now where the private detective gets in contact with the flatmates and says, I'm not feeling so comfortable about this, can you just check on them? So they go downstairs and they knock on the bedroom door, no answer. And shortly after 11 o'clock, they discover the bodies of both Stratten and Snyder.
yuck.
Each had been killed by a single blast of Snyder's shotgun. However,
Shotgun.
yeah, both bodies were nude,
Oh, here we go again.
and according to the police timeline, Snyder had shot Stratten that afternoon within an hour of her arrival at the house, and then he had committed suicide approximately 1 hour after the murder. However, in reading this, I've read conflicting responses. One of them says that she was raped before she was murdered, and I've read somewhere else that she was raped both before and after.
Posthumously.
And after, because she had blood all over her body as well.
Oh,
What
so
is
gross.
really, really gross is he shot her in the face.
Fuck off.
What?
Yeah.
You can't rape
So-
blood. I mean,
Oh,
yuck.
yucca.
Yeah. So in an ultimate, really, fuck you to her, to Hefner, to Bogdanovich, to the whole world.
An
If
annihilation.
you can't have
It's
her,
an annihilation.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
she's
smash
mine.
her
This was
face
me.
in. I'm gonna ruin her.
It's over. This is who she was. I'm going to blow off her face, and that's what he did.
But
And then a full hour after, did himself.
do you
What?
believe
Is
that he
that
had
just
sex
hideous?
with her body after he shot her with having removed her face with a shotgun?
100% he did.
It's all
I
about
reckon he
power
did.
and ownership. Quite possibly, the blood on her body would suggest that it was after, or both before and after.
Oh, it's just disgusting.
But I've only
But
read
also
that in
he's
one
a whack
article. To be
job.
fair, yeah, total maniacal. And so
How do you get
the
to
private
that?
detective is the person who first of all calls the Playboy Mansion.
Yeah. What? Do you
Well,
call
I'm
the
sure they
police?
call that first.
Surely
No,
call
well,
the
I'm
police
sure.
first.
I'm sure the flatmates called the police,
Right.
but and then Hefner calls Bogdanovich, and Bogdanovich he collapses and has to be sedated. Her mother's informed by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, actually, and there you have it.
That is just
That
awful.
is
You
pretty
can't get revenge
horrendous.
on a coward
Given
like
that she was the Playmate of the Year. I mean,
What was
it was
sorry,
sort of,
hang on, Carla. What was that, Paul?
You can't get revenge on someone like that.
it's revolting, isn't it? Just
Like,
utterly
if you're
like an animal.
Bogdanovich and you're like there's no punishment, there's no just shoot yourself, mate. Fuck.
Yeah, there's no recourse.
Don't worry about
Someone
anyone
who,
else.
It's all about him.
Yeah, it's all about him
Yeah,
taking
totally.
control of the whole situation.
Is it time to try to
Lighten the mood. go on.
Is it time to try to lighten the
Have a
mood a
go.
little bit?
Have a crack.
Because I'm just wondering if the Human League song "Don't You Want Me, Baby." I feel like that might have been loosely based on this song, this story. I was working as a waitress in a Dairy
In a Dairy Queen when
I met you.
I was
And I
working
met-
as a waitress
Even
in a
then,
Dairy
I
Queen.
knew I'd find a
That much
better
is
place.
true.
Even with or without
That much
you.
is true. But even then, I knew I'd find a much better
Pimp.
place.
Even with or
without
without.
you.
Hugh.
Or a pimp.
With or without Hugh.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Either with or without you, yes.
But
see what I did there.
oh, hang on,
Great
hang
play
on,
on
hang on.
I think my pronunciation of Bogdanovich is going to be
Carla,
very difficult
Carla,
to get
could you just pause for a second? I just need to give you.
Pause.
I need to give you a little bit of this. You ready?
Oh,
Dum.
I didn't hear it.
Oh, get out of town. Try again.
I just did it myself.
Nothing.
Now I got it. Thank you. I deserve that. It was totally cheese.
We didn't get it.
You didn't hear it?
The second time.
The boys didn't hear it. So
No.
with Carla, do your joke again.
Either time.
Oh, with or without you.
The boy.
Hey, there we go.
Yep.
3-second delay is
Boom,
really
tish.
irritating. But anyway. There you go. Now that I've
Yeah,
worked out the
sorry
media
about
board.
Yeah. Don't you want me? That's nice.
Paul Schneider.
Don't you want me?
Jewish pimp.
Yeah.
Don't you want me, Schneider?
Well, he
Don't
did.
you want me, Jewish pimp?
Oh my lord.
Anyway, back to our
Don't
victims.
you shoot me, Schneider.
Oh, enough.
I'll give you
Too
a
far.
big nut punch.
Oh, he needed a nut punch. He needed a serious nut punch. Nut punch city limits, that man. Anyway.
That
He
is
did.
fucking. He deserves that. He needs to. Oh, anyway,
Yes.
let's not go there.
The 12-inch version.
I will finish off this part of the story by saying that Dorothy was cremated and she was buried in the Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery, which I believe is the same cemetery that Marilyn Monroe is buried in. Which I can add something really quite creepy to that, which is in reading about Hugh Hefner separately.
Go on then.
When Hugh died, he had paid $75,000 in 1992. That's where I was getting that number from. So that he is actually buried in the crypt beside Marilyn Monroe, and he said because
That's a bit.
so they're all in there
That's
together.
a bit Mr. Tits pervert.
I know.
I feel
He
like.
said.
Gross.
Apparently, Mr. Hefner was quoted saying, "Spending eternity next to Marilyn is an opportunity too sweet to pass up."
Oh,
Isn't that
I'm
just-
sorry. Can we just
Oh.
do a little segue to last week? You
Oh,
know, we did
that's
the whole Wuthering
disgusting.
Heights joke last week, and we know
Yeah.
this thing. For those of us who've read
Yes.
Wuthering Heights and know the story,
Not me.
Heathcliff.
Haven't even seen the movie.
Okay.
Is there one?
I've only seen the film clip with Kate.
The real Heathcliff. Well, not the real Heathcliff.
Yeah, that's me too.
That's me. That's so
Oh,
embarrassed.
the Wiley. Anyway,
That's my Wuthering Heights. Yeah.
Heathcliff, when Kathy dies, because Kathy dies well before Heathcliff,
Yeah.
he breaks into her crypt, and she had a lead-lined casket, and he smashes it open, and when he
And
dies...
makes a doll out of her.
No, he doesn't do that. When he dies, he buries himself next to her and also has an open crypt so that their remains will join each other. Isn't that repulsive?
Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah.
So Hugh Hefner
Is he
and Marilyn
from
Monroe.
Novgorod or whatever that town was called?
Novgorod. Oh, God, you would think after the many times I
Nizhny
said Nizhny Novgorod. Thank you. I'm here all week.
Novgorod. Yeah.
Novgorod. I got it wrong so
Yeah.
many times in the
Yeah.
so many times in the actual episode, but it's Nizhny Novgorod. You're right. Anyway,
Back
Well,
to
yes.
Dorothy. So there is a whole sort of aftermath that comes after the Stratton murder. Obviously, shockwaves go through Hollywood, and Bogdanovich just totally loses the plot. So he sort of goes to ground, and then what he does is, a year later, the film is released. They all laughed, and it has a disappointing run. So he spends $5 million of his own dollars. $5 million of his own dollars.
which by the
Getting
way,
it
in
onto
the 80s,
screens.
that was a lot of money.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it kind of sends him broke, to be honest.
$5 million. I've been saving my $5 million for years.
And it's quite interesting. The film wasn't well received then, but, you know, it's one of those things that as years have gone on, I actually look back at it and think it's a better film than what it was at the time. And some people say it was brilliant, but it was not well received with, you know, in that time. So what happens is Bogdanovich goes and writes a book about Dorothy, and it comes out in 1984, so 4 years after her death, and it's called The Killing of the Unicorn. And it's sort of described as a biography of Dorothy Stratten, a memoir of Bogdanovich's affair with the married playmate, who, you got to remember, she was 20 when this was all over. She was 20.
Yeah, it's so
I know.
sad. It's so sad.
And I'd written down, he was 41 when she died.
hell.
Yeah, so 20 and 41 when they were together, and when she died, because it was all over so quickly.
But we're okay. We're okay with large.
Not even
25
legally old
years
enough
is
to
my
drink.
maximum age gap that I'm allowing for. But anyway, keep going.
Well, they're very young. That's all I'm trying to say. It's not the age
I'm-
difference so
I'm
much
not-
as what your life experience at that time. So, but this is quite interesting.
Like
so
for her
it's
though,
about his
not old
affair.
enough to drink,
Sorry, you were
but
saying?
old enough to be Playmate of the Year. Not old enough to drink, but old enough to be Playmate of the Year. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Martha,
we're right.
Yeah.
fucker.
I can hear us.
That's American.
We're in the
for you,
same
isn't it?
room.
Yeah, yeah.
Did it get it eventually?
I heard old
Hello.
enough to not old enough to drink, but old enough to be a playmate, and a very, very good point made, my friend. Oh, you
Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
There you go.
What's
Because
the
there's two different ages in the States of age of drinking. Depending on where you are in the States, there's legal ages of drinking. So there's 21 years and there's also 18 years, but it really depends on the state you're in.
the point is more that she's not old enough to drink, but she's old enough to get her bits out all over
Yeah.
the world as
Yeah.
the like it's just a bit of
It's
a
a bullshit that she's not allowed to drink, but
A
she's
weird
allowed
standard.
to not serve alcohol or be around alcohol, but she's allowed to put her tits out in public and be exploited. That's the point. Yeah, and it's a very well observed point. Thank you.
Yeah.
and go to pajama party / roller derby
Roller disco.
or whatever's.
Yeah. So in the book, The Killing of the Unicorn,
That's the one.
Here we go.
Yes.
this is where it gets quite interesting because Bogdanovich is trying to
I'm
put a
not
different
okay with that
narrative
title.
forward.
Okay.
He was being very creative. And he has a scathing attack on Hefner and his role and the Playboy philosophy. And he thinks that contributed to her death. By far the most controversial part of the book is the director's claim, so Bogdanovich's claim, that Hefner had sexually assaulted a then 18-year-old Stratten in August of 1978.
In the grotto.
Correct.
Oh, that grotto is grotty.
A grab in the grotto.
Oh, the grottiest grotto.
According to Bogdanovich's allegation, the assault occurred while the two were alone in a secluded area of the Playboy mansion at the end of Stratton's first day of posing for the magazine's photographer. Bogdanovich chose to use the word seduced to describe Hefner's behaviour in the book because he had originally used the word raped in the drafts of his manuscript, but Hefner's lawyers clearly were not going to be comfortable with that. So, amongst other allegations, he'd also said that Stratten had not married Snyder out of love, but because she used it as an excuse to block Hefner's advances.
It's really funny in a world like this when it starts to implode. So, you know, old mate Bogdanovich, who is, what did you say, 40 or 41, going out with someone who's 20, is accusing somebody else of rape, even though both of them are spreading her naked body all over the world. And, like,
Yeah.
you know, don't get on your high horse, mate. You're as much part of the problem as everyone else. Pull your head in.
Well, that
I'm not sure that
Good
Bogdanovich
chat.
actually exploited her in any way because I haven't seen They All Laughed, but I'm guessing she's probably not naked in it.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding.
He put her in a movie because he fancied her and he thought he'd get his bit of
His
her
wick
because
away.
he's 20 odd years older than she is. Like,
He was already
Just-
getting his wick away before he put it in the film, Carla. You're the one who told the story.
I think that they.
I think it probably.
Lion sleeps tonight.
So that book has come out, and to be honest, it was really negatively reviewed. While few objected to his attacks on Hefner and Playboy, they were like, yeah, well, that probably is fairly accurate.
Yeah,
they were sceptical of Bogdanovich's newfound feminism, pointing out, for example, that he seemed oblivious to his own sexist susceptibility.
I feel exactly
it didn't go down so well, and he was, really quite out of favour. The image that Hugh Hefner presented to the public was much more of a father figure. He was, trying to be this benevolent support network for Stratten. He emphasised, how amazing she was, because what he did was, after her death in May 1981, in that issue...
Can I just interject?
Yeah.
Because it's nice he's a father figure. I'm sorry, Carla. It's
That's
nice he's a father...
It's
nice he's a father figure, but... He,
Still a pedo.
according to Bogdanovich, raped her. And fathers
Because who doesn't want to be
their
raped
daughters.
by a father figure
No.
in the grotto?
Just saying.
Who even
I don't
has
care
a
whether you
grotto
call
in their
yourself a
house,
father
you
or a
dirty
figure.
mole?
And what's with the grotto? That's right, Paul. What's with all the grabbing and the groping and the shit that goes down the grotto? I don't think Hugh Hefner's position is sound.
So in 1985, so a year after the Unicorn... I forgot what the Unicorn book was called. That book had been...
Bogdanovich's book,
The book
yeah.
had been published. Hefner was interviewed. And Hefner admitted that several weeks after Stratten first arrived in Los Angeles, so this is the very first time she was there, I believe, the two had taken a nude soak in the jacuzzi on the Playboy Mansion grounds.
Ugh.
I don't know if that's actually the grotto or it's near the grotto.
Oh.
The place where Bogdanovich claimed the sexual assault had occurred. In the same
In the
interview,
ghetto?
while allowing that they had hugged in the jacuzzi, Hefner denied having forced himself on Stratten. Hefner also denied, despite his reputation, that he'd ever seen so much as made a pass after learning that she expected to become engaged to her boyfriend. As it would have turned out, this would have been 2 months before he'd ever met Schneider, so this was before she was going back to Vancouver. So there is a little bit of a question mark, shall we say, over that.
Well, he's dead, so
There was
let's say
also
he
another-
raped her.
Shock me.
Get going.
Well, this is what he said. So then I think he was a little bit caught out in that interview. But what he would go on to say is, there is still a great tendency for this thing to fall into the classic cliche of small town girl comes to Playboy, comes to Hollywood, life in the fast lane.
Oh, fuck off.
Hefner said
Classic
after the murder.
cliche. An entire business built on bringing women into this scenario. Fuck off, Hugh Hefner.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That is
Grooming
true, but he
people
does
to
go
take
on to
their
say, and
clothes
I,
off before
this
they're
is
all
Blow it
important.
out your ass.
with it.
This is important though. That is not what really happened. A very sick guy saw his meal ticket and his connection to power, whatever, slipping away. And it was that that made him kill her. And I do think that's true. I think they all played a role
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
fantasy factory, this machine that is
Schneider
Hollywood.
killed her.
They've all played a role.
Schneider killed her.
Totally.
There's no
He was the one who
question.
totally could handle it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll take that. However,
I was trying to work out which one was the very sick guy.
they all were.
Now, this is the last bit, but it's really quite interesting. Schmitty, listen up. You'll love this bit, darling. So, there was a bit of a legacy. So, first of all, there are two films that have been made. One is just a made-for-television, which is called Death of a Centerfold, the Dorothy Stratten story, which was
that a
released
Lifetime
very
film?
quickly because it was
Was
released
that
in
a Lifetime
1981. Well, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Really?
And the other one,
And the other one, this is what I
the
find
other
really
one can be
interesting.
seen on Pornhub.
Jamie Lee
No,
Curtis
it's a
looks
Bob
nothing.
Fosse feature film.
Jamie Lee
And it-
Curtis looks nothing like.
But she's hot.
Yeah, she was hot, but she looks
Well, she's
nothing
hot, though. Remember
like
that she had long blonde hair.
this girl,
Yeah.
Dorothy Stratten. Okay, go on. And Bob Fosse.
And how freaky is this? The other film was, yes, it's a Bob Fosse feature film. It was called Star 80, which remember was the number plate, which was Paul Snider's number plate. But this is quite interesting. So
Yep.
on her grave, Bogdanovich put a quote on her grave from Ernest Hemingway. I've forgotten what it's called.
Here we go.
But it turns out his granddaughter, Mariel Hemingway, plays Dorothy Stratten in the 1983 Star 80 film, and Eric Roberts, who's actually Schneider. So that was interesting. What I find particularly interesting is in December 1988, at the age of 49, Bogdanovich married Stratton's sister, Louise,
yuck.
who was 20.
Oh, yuck. Yuck.
Oh. Oh,
You
stop.
sick, twisted fuck.
So Bogdanovich, after Dorothy had died, had said, I would have gone on to marry her. They would have been my family. I will look after them. So he looked after her mother. She did have a younger brother and a much younger sister. An 8
Blah,
years, yeah.
blah, blah.
So the little sister Louise, her private school fees and her modelling fees were all paid for by Bogdanovich, who then later, when she was 20, married her. Their marriage lasted for 13 years actually, but doesn't that just make it feel a bit icky?
Of course,
makes
her
me wanna
modelling fees were paid for her
What would
by
that have made
him.
him,
Like,
though?
she probably didn't ever want to be a model, but he said, I'll pay for those fees. Don't worry, you just model your little ass off.
Isn't that crazy?
Fucker.
Yuck.
Oh. And
It's
the last
disgrace.
thing is, she's also in as part of the legacy. There's a song by the Red Hot Chili Peppers called Californication, and there's a line in there that refers to Dorothy,
Yes.
it's about the book, about the unicorn book. I was just going to look at the lyrics. I looked at it last night. Now I've forgotten because I can't remember anything. So I'm too old.
Because they're hard to understand,
As I
those
live and
lyrics.
breathe.
Oh, firstborn unicorn. So that's her. Firstborn unicorn, hardcore, soft porn, dream of Californication. So they're old Dorothy Stratten. And because she was Canadian, I believe that
Immortalised.
Bryan Adams has sung about her and another band, which I'd never heard of, called Prism, which must have been big in Canada. But yeah, so she wasn't on the scene for long at all.
I
But
bet Alanis Morissette wrote a song about her too, where she probably stabbed some blokes because they deserved it.
oh
or
my
something.
God. But isn't it interesting,
Nut
like all
punched
of
them
these
at least.
characters?
At least.
Hugh Hefner, Peter Bogdanovich, Paul Schneider, and poor old Dorothy Stratten, who they just,
Used up.
I don't know.
Used up
Oh,
and
I don't know,
then
actually. I
killed.
don't know what I'm saying. Yeah.
All right, we hope you're enjoying our show. We'd love it if you would follow and like us on our Facebook page at Trial by Wine and share with all your family and friends. Help us get to 2,000 downloads by the 30th of January 2022 by giving us a 5-star rating, as it helps spread the word. We can't thank you enough for your support. Now back to the show. All right, so I've got to think
So,
about some sentencing.
What's your trial?
Yeah, exactly.
Who would you sentence? Who would you sentence, and what would you sentence them for and to?
Okay, so Carla,
Yeah.
I want to know what you think should be the sentence and who you think you would send down for this.
Really? Well,
Yeah, I do.
having
You go first
I-
because you've had more time to think about it. Yeah.
I know, but you know, I always go light, and I always feel bad if I go hard, and I the guilt sits with me for several days afterwards. If I say something like I did after
You
one of the
know
next
what we
few
do
ones,
is fictitious.
that bothered me for a
Oh,
week.
what we
I
do
know,
is
but I know, darling, but I
It's
still
fictitious.
don't want to say anything. I know, of course it is, but I still feel
Oh.
I don't know, uncomfortable. Anyway, I think
Okay,
that
all right.
my sole judgment I will leave for Mr. Paul Schneider, depending on how Jewish you want to be on any given day. I think that his idea of hell would be somewhere where he was an absolute nobody with no access to beautiful women, money, the extravagances of life that he, thinks that he deserves, whether that be fast cars, fast women, money, mink coats, jewellery. And I was thinking what might be awful for him would just to be if he was in some sort of permanent state of being stuck in a suburban hell with a sea haggy old. That's not very nice to women though, but you know, like some old bitchy old sea haggy wife who just was, you know, dreadful and treated him terribly, and he was totally under the thumb with her, and he had no one could see him. He was trapped, but he could see out, and he could see that Dorothy went on to be a great star. And I had read a quote somewhere that said that somebody, and I can't remember who it is, I could find it, they likened her, they said that she could have been a Julia Roberts or a Reese Witherspoon, which I thought were two kind of very different options. But I think in saying that, I mean, he was watching her become a legitimate star. You know, she was an actress who had sought after roles, who had an incredible career, perhaps ended up with, you know, being a director herself, and was really part of the Hollywood establishment, not just some girl who got a gear off because some, you know, sleazy bloke made her. I think that would be his ultimate punishment, because he just, for her to be legitimate and to be real, and him to be a nobody, and no one knew his name, no one even knew he ever existed, but he had to watch it all from some shitty suburban situation. I think that would be punishment for him. And a nut punch.
And several nut punches.
Several nut punches.
In the grotto. He needs a good nut punch in the grotto.
With the sewerage line straight into his mouth.
Yes, and a grotto grope. A grope in the grotto.
A grope in the grotto. What about you, Schmitty? What are you thinking?
Yeah, look, it's a difficult one because, you know, we did the whole Wuthering Heights connection earlier.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about Hugh Hefner being buried next to Marilyn Monroe grossed me out.
I know.
And you talked about Dorothy being cremated. And I don't know. I feel earlier in the book of Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff, as a punishment for Kathy, because Kathy, you know, burned him for another, hung her dog. So, like, on a tree. I know. This is a very unpleasant kind of, you know, visual that you get when you're...
Yes.
Ironic, I say visual, but idea in your head that you get when you're reading this book. Heathcliff takes a small, I don't know whether it was a Pomeranian, it was a small dog anyway, and hangs this dog outside, and it upsets Kathy a lot. And I think Paul Schneider is like a little yappy fucking dog that never got anywhere. Small everything. Small dick, small fry, small everything.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hang him from a tree as Heathcliff did to Kathy's dog.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not nice, I know. But, you know, I just feel like he's the smallest of small people and had no right to put poor Dorothy in this situation.
I know. It's awful to think that he shot
no
her
right
face
to-
off. How could you have loved somebody and do that to them? And I did read about a lady, maybe I heard a lady say, she said, you know, truly loving someone is also understanding that, you know, they might not be best suited to be with you, or that they no longer love you, and allowing that to sort of happen. It's not shooting their face off and then raping them.
Fucking face off. I
know, that's just...
And then raping their dead corpse.
Correct. That's not about love.
It is so disgusting.
Yeah.
No, it's about control. It's about ownership.
Totally. Yep.
He didn't love her. He was a prick. I'm going to hang him on a tree and kill him like Heathcliff killed the small dog, because I feel like this is very much a Wuthering Heights story in a different time.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, Paul.
Clarky, what do you think?
So, there's a couple of things that I would like to, a couple of crimes I'd like to call out, and a couple of sentences I'd like to have. So, my first one is Hugh Hefner, because the whole I'm going to pay an exorbitant amount of money to have the grave next to Marilyn because I'm a dirty perv and I want to spend the rest of my life with her, I'm actually not okay with. So he just needs to be exhumed and probably just chucked on the scrap heap, and you know, I won't miss that. But then I'm not okay with Bogdanovich, who thinks that he's not part of the whole thing, but he really, really is, and he's he's chasing, or he's looking for people in places where it's probably not appropriate. He finds someone who's 20 years younger. Did he marry her? I'm not really sure. And then he ended up marrying the sister who's 8 years younger again. Like, it's just all a little bit gross for my liking. So he's not a fan of mine. So I think that he needs to be exhumed, and I'm not sure where this place is yet, or even if it exists, but he should definitely be buried.
Are you talking about Bogdanovich?
But I think that's in the Trial by Wine.
Totally Bogdanovich.
That's the Trial by Wine theme park. We have a little cemetery.
That's something. He's not dead yet, so that's something for him to look forward to. He's old though, so it won't be long before he goes there.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, well, no, that then I can't exhume him, so we need to have a different punishment, which is probably just, I don't know, being shot in the face.
Just kill him.
I probably wouldn't object too much to that.
Feels a bit harsh. Anyway, okay.
I know it's over the top. It's over the top, but I'm just a bit annoyed about him, and I don't really know.
Is that
what else
boggers?
to do. And clearly, I know that whilst I say this, it's not really going to happen. Yeah, totally boggers.
With Bogdanovich.
Yeah. And his penchant for younger sisters.
I am.
The
I'm
younger
uncomfortable
sister,
with
that's
this
it.
book.
The penchant for the younger sister makes him very uncomfortable. Which I get.
But it's not just that. There's also that piece around the fact that he decided that he should call out how shonky everyone else is in that industry, when I just don't think he's that disconnected from it. And it's just something weird about when that stuff
Yeah, but I gotta say,
anyway,
What
so
Duck
I think
Rock was a very funny film. Just saying.
And that all happened before he met Dorothy.
It's a good point you make, and maybe one day I'll
But
watch
it is really interesting that you say that, Paul, because in looking at the story itself, if you just look at this for what it is, where in most of the articles and different things about a murder, that in itself is a dreadful crime. But it's actually the other stuff that when you unearth that and you go, oh, if I lay that over the top and I go, hang on, what? Hugh Hefner bought like the crypt next to Marilyn Monroe so he could be buried next to her for all eternity. And he's the guy who's like saying that at some point, he's the moral compass compared to the guy who he's saying is a pimp. Or you look at Bogdanovich and you say that, oh, he was a good guy. He was a great movie director. He was this. But then, he ends up marrying the little sister who was 8 years younger than Dorothy. All of that stuff, when you start to put that in with the story, where you start to feel very uncomfortable about who they were as not just the part of the story about the murder, it's also what these other people, their view of the world is. You start to think, oh God, they were all, white men of sort of, I guess, their own making, but using,
privilege.
Of their own making,
Dubious character,
using women.
They were all white men of dubious character.
Yes, who were trying to use women to either make money
70s,
or
early
say they were in
80s.
love with them.
No, in the 70s and early 80s, women were commodities.
Absolutely.
Right up until, yesterday.
Yeah.
You laugh.
I'm not
true,
anti the whole, a 20-year age difference in a relationship. I think that, that's okay.
Thank you.
It's when you're part of that institution
After
that
25
kind
years
of
age difference in a
sexualizes
relationship,
children.
not prostitution, Paul.
Yeah. But the age isn't the issue. It's when you're sexualizing children who are 17 years old and then trying to cry foul. And he wasn't that part of it, but he was totally immersed in that world. And to me, it doesn't come as inconceivable that his movies all feature a pretty woman as a centerpiece, and then all of a sudden he finds himself in this world, and then he's marrying the sister.
Pick me a film that doesn't have a pretty woman in the centerpiece. It's not. I don't think that he's.
I'm not. No. But if you, none of these things in isolation are the problem.
Okay.
It's when you connect them all
Okay.
that it becomes a little bit foul. That's where I'm kind of.
I think he's.
You know, he happens to find.
I agree with you. He's going out with his sister was distasteful.
No, but it's not just that. He meets a penthouse pet and straight away finds a role for her in the movie. You know,
Yeah,
like.
but is it
you
really
can
not
just
hard
see
to
that
believe that
coming
you
a
meet
mile
someone that
away.
you're so attracted to and you think is so gorgeous and wonderful that you want to, create a role for her? I don't think that's unbelievable. I think after
I don't
she's
think
shot in the
any of it
face
is
and raped
unbelievable,
by
but
her
connected, it's all
ex-husband
just.
or husband at the
Estranged
time,
husband, yes.
that you then create a relationship with her younger sister, that is fucking wrong and sick. I'm sorry, I'm calling that. I'm calling that out.
Yeah, but I think but I think I could say, I think it's a good call, but I think I could see some of these foul things coming, and not that, but there's just a lot of borderline things that have happened, and if you connect them all together, you kind of go, yeah, this bloke's not as credible as he's
Correct.
making out to be. So yeah, he probably not shot in the face. That's probably a bit much, but he definitely needs some good nut punchery. But I also think that Schneider, I don't know, we're kind of talking a little bit at the moment about the whole theme park idea of how to punish people, and it's not a fun world, so don't anyone ever think that you would want to go here. But, if we're going to come up with some punishments that are new and fresh and maybe not just putting people in jail for a long time, I think there was a Disneyland ride called It's a Small World.
I've been on it.
And you used to get in a boat and go around
It's a
it. Yeah, and they'd play,
small world after
It's a
all.
small world.
Yeah,
or
I've
whatever.
seen it. Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah. So I wanna take a little bit of that, but make it called It's a Pathetically Insignificant World. And then he can sit there and go around on It's a Pathetically Insignificant World ride for all eternity. And it could have images of Dorothy come up. It could have, he doesn't like drugs, so let's just chuck some drugs in there as well, just to razz him up a little bit. Just that sort of stuff. Make him really reinforce the fact that, you don't own people. That's not a thing.
No, and I think he
don't,
could just be on the,
don't be an
how
arse.
these rides are all, you're in a kind of a cart and you're on a railway track and as you chug along you see these things. What if he was just perpetually strapped to the tracks of this thing and he never, he regenerates himself every time that someone runs over him. So he's just cut in half, cut out, like...
Oh,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Now you're feeling it, yeah.
Cheapers.
We're just going to run him over with...
Ouch, that's fairly tough. A little bit of Groundhog Day where he dies every day.
What's the name of your world again? Pathetically.
And then he's reborn
Insignificant World.
and he wakes up every morning. No, that's the ride. And so it'll be, it's a pathetically insignificant world after all.
It's a pathetically
insignificant world after all.
It's a pathetically insignificant
world
after all.
It's a pathetically insignificant world after all.
I've had too much gin to be even able to say that.
I feel like that
exactly
works
like
quite
that.
nicely with my idea of that sort of suburban. That's exactly what I was sort of describing, I think. After all, it's a pathetically insignificant world after all.
Pathetically insignificant world after all. Really hard to fit all of those.
Exactly that. Yes. We might have to change the melody a little bit or the rhythm a little bit, but you know where it's going.
Add another bar and then we can fit it all in. It's fine.
Yes. I think that's it
Well,
for me.
And Carla, you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right. Well, all I have to say is that was a pretty sad story, but a good one, and well done, Carla.
I thought it was sort
Congratulations.
of, I don't know, I thought it was quite interesting because there were sort of characters that we'd heard of and all this stuff that sort of goes on behind the scenes sometimes that you're sort of not so aware of. You know, people's behaviour is very questionable and there's lots of things that are in broad daylight. You know, we see it all the time, but it's only when you start to dig a bit deeper or look behind things you think, oh God, that's not right. I found that quite interesting.
Yeah, look, I liked the fact that you pulled in a heavy hitter in Hugh Hefner,
Yeah.
not Bogdanovich. I mean, I know of the films that he made, but
Yeah.
wouldn't call him a heavy hitter. And I have a feeling he just dissipated after that, which is sad. But I just think it was
But
a really
fair.
good story, and it was a sad story. I got to say, it was sad
Yeah.
because poor old Dorothy didn't deserve that, and and you know, she could have gone on to learn how to speak like an adult. Unfortunately, she didn't get to do that. Anyway,
I was just hanging for the moment where I could actually make a joke about the fact that Dorothy ended up leaving that industry and became Dorothy the dinosaur, but the fact that she only lived till 20, that just was never ever going to happen. So
Yeah.
that was a bit disappointing from my
no,
perspective.
it's pretty tragic. It's tragic. Anyway, good job, Carla. Great story.
Yeah.
Paul, any final comments before we sign off?
No, I think amazing again. We've had a little bit of an entertainment theme over the last few episodes, so that's been fun. So yeah, really well done. Great chat, as always, and can't wait to do it again.
Yeah.
As Paul would say, good chat, good chat. Miss you already. Goodbye,
Bye.
guys.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Love you long time.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.